morning, everybody, and welcome to It Just Means More Football and Coffee. I am Rob Williams. He is Craig McMichael, and we are here where college football never stops. It's our cup of coffee. Craig, what's up, my man? How's it going?
Good, my friend. Things are a little different today. Where are you coming from? What's happening with you?
So you can, yeah, you obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, you cannot see me currently because I'm coming live from Mexico. I'm in the Yucatan in a little town called Flamboyanes, and I'm here on a mission trip this week with a ministry that partners with the church where I'm on staff, and so we're just doing a little um, doing a little bathroom construction in a village where there are no bathrooms. They're pretty much holes in the ground huts. They just recently got running water in this village about 4 months ago. Most people were operating off of water basins that they would, get filled through various methods.
Hmm.
And so it's been really cool. We're doing a little tour tomorrow to look at some other ministries and churches established up and down the coast here. So this is my second time coming down and being with this ministry, but the team that I'm with has been coming here for over 10 years, and some of them have been coming here for 2 decades. So it's pretty well established, but it does change the dynamic for us a little bit since I'm on the phone calling in live, swatting mosquitoes that are the size of dragonflies.
Well, as you know, if there's a will, there's a way, and I love the fact that you are down there doing that and putting your work and your message kind of just bring that out. So I definitely want to give you an opportunity to have that. And what we'll do is we'll post a little link. We'll get some pictures up so that the folks at home can kind of see what you're doing, and if they're moved in that direction, maybe they can help kind of support what you guys got going on. So I love it. But I do have to ask you, how's the coffee?
Oh, it's great. It's phenomenal. It's about twice as strong as anything that I would drink in the U.S. Um, the only downside is because we're busy throughout the day, and
Mhm.
everybody here, big coffee drinkers, they actually have coffee for us up on the balcony, 6:30 in the morning. We're doing a little devotion time together as a team there in the mornings, so they're able to get our coffee up there for us, so we can start the day off with coffee. We're big coffee drinkers, so the only downside is that we can't drink it throughout the day because we're so busy. We're not anywhere necessarily where we have access to it. So actually, guys, right now, who are making cups of coffee, and I'm currently on this call at 7:30 p.m. So coffee's great. Coffee's great.
That's phenomenal. I
Better than
love
Maxwell House, but still sponsor us. Still sponsor us, Maxwell House. I love you. Good to the last drop.
I love it, man. I love it. So real quick, I want to get to we've got a fun guest coming up today, but we just wrapped up the combine in Indianapolis, and I gotta ask you, you are banging the Spencer Rattler drum. Tell me why you feel that Rattler is moving up. What did he do? What did he have going on this weekend? And where do you see him slotting in with these quarterbacks?
Well, I think it did shift a little bit, and you can kind of take a couple of different looks at it coming out of the combine. One of the things that on the upside is that I saw some analysts noting his ability to not get happy feet, not adjust his feet when throwing to new receivers, but simply to adjust his throw and put the ball in a different spot. Whereas comparatively speaking, a lot of young quarterbacks, when they're looking at receivers who they're not comfortable with, will kind of chop their feet or change their a little bit. We didn't see that with Rattler, which is a good sign, and scouts are calling that out. And so I think that shows his maturity and shows his ability to adjust on the fly, which is an important skill at the highest level in the NFL. And so that's a positive. On the negative side, he did run a 4.94, which is still slightly faster than I was in high school, but not by much. So that's pretty slow, and that I think causes him a little bit of an issue. I would have put him in the second round range. I think
Mhm.
that some people are going to be afraid of that 40 time.
Hmm.
And you still have people asking questions about the high school stuff, which is just wild to me. I don't know if you saw the QB1 documentary on Netflix that was out, whatever, 5, 6 years
Yeah.
ago
Yeah.
at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
But but a completely different individual. You're talking about a 17, 18-year old versus a 20, 23-year-old adult at this point, and a lot of life has happened, a lot of maturity has happened. So not I don't really I get the NFL is going to ask all those questions. I think if I'm hard pressed to be a betting man and put money on it right now, I'd put him in the third round.
Okay.
I like him honestly over Penix and probably over Bo Nix as well. Um, they got McCarthy going in the first round, and I know you have your own thoughts about that. I think
It,
McCarthy is a great athlete and a fair thrower of the ball. They just didn't need to throw the ball in Ann Arbor this year. But I think Spencer Rattler over him as well. And so I really would have Spencer probably in that fourth or fifth overall quarterback slot. I think he's probably going to drop to like seventh if I'm if I'm
you're
if
saying,
I'm rating the quarterbacks.
yeah. So, a couple things on Rattler. I do think he's matured. I was not a big fan of his at Oklahoma. I think some of that personality, um, and just I think some of that immaturity. I think you kind of talked about. You saw the Netflix documentary, and he did mature. I mean, he was in an uphill climb in South Carolina. He definitely had to do a little bit more with it where he's going. So I'm interested to see where he goes. I am going to feel for my Falcons brethren when they do draft JJ McCarthy and are disappointed again because I don't see it. If a team is running the ball 32 times as Michigan did against Penn State, you are not trusting your quarterback. And sure, McCarthy made a couple of plays here and there. He made a real nice play off his back foot in the fourth quarter that helped spark that win against Alabama in the Rose Bowl. But I'm just not seeing it. And the one thing I'm going to push back on is Penix and Bo Nix. Both those guys have dealt with adversity. Penix with injury. Bo Nix had to overcome the bad Bo mantra that he had over at Auburn, and also that pressure and everything else of being the savior to go into Oregon and playing really well. Um, I'm not sure about Caleb Williams and Drake May. I think that they're good. I think Caleb's got to get out of his dad's shadow and out of his own press clippings. Drake May, lived up to his time in North Carolina of just kind of underachieving, kind of going under the radar. But if I'm going to look at my two steals of the draft, I'm going with Penix and I'm going to go with Bo Nix because I think they both have something to prove. I think similar to what Rattler, said with Rattler, I think that those guys are going to be second to third round picks. They may get a year or two to develop. And to me, those guys, along with Rattler, are likely to have that longer career. I see McCarthy flaming out. I see Drake May flaming out. And look at what happened to Justin Fields in Chicago. Get ready, Caleb Williams. That's the same more coming, same coming there. So
I honestly like Jaden Daniels the best out of all the quarterbacks in this draft. I think that he's built for the shifting landscape of the game,
hmm
especially in the NFL. Where quarterbacks really have to be mobile, but he's proven that he can sling it as well. And I think I just like his upside the best. My issues with Penix and Nix are just really more of the systems that they were, especially in the case of Bo Nix,
yep.
where it's a lot of one read type of throws, and so that doesn't translate to the NFL as necessarily what Rattler's situation is. And you have Penix who has an award-winning offensive line this year, and so he didn't really have to deal with the pressure. Whereas I think as a Gamecock fan, it's difficult to watch Spencer get pressured all year and deal with a struggling offensive line, but it actually does him better going into the NFL. So excited to see what he does. My favorite fit for Rattler is LA,
Yep.
the Rams, and sit under Stafford for a year or two and let him hang it up and then take over. I think that first round is creeping up there. Denver's going to push. That could
hmm
be a Knicks fit.
Well,
Um, and
speak
like you said,
speaks.
Atlanta's probably going to be in the market too.
Well, Denver just made a big push today. They just dropped Russell Wilson. I think they spent like 84 million to send him on his way. So I know they've got Drew Lock there. as the backup quarterback, former Mizzou quarterback. So that they'll be looking probably first round and looking to move up. One quick thing on Daniels as you
Right.
talk about him. Absolutely love Daniels as an athlete, coming in from Arizona State, where I feel like kind of ebbed and flowed with kind of how Arizona State did. Really came in and I think did a nice job at LSU. My biggest concern with Jaden Daniels, how many times did you see him take those bone crushing hits this year? And if he does that in the NFL, that career could be over before it even gets started. So that's my biggest fear with Jaden is he's a hell of an athlete. He willed LSU to their wins this year because they had no defense. So that's going to be that's my biggest concern with Jaden though is can he stay healthy? Can he keep himself out of harm's way? I'm not sure
It's
yet.
a fair point. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. He's got to make the right decision.
yeah, for sure, for
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, so around the rest of the SEC, anything stick out to you? You know, you have incoming teams, and we're going to get to this in just a minute. But obviously, Xavier Worthy's 40 time is a big story coming out. You also got this isn't SEC, but we're going to talk a little Big 12 with our guests here in just a minute because of Oklahoma and Texas. And you have the kid from Texas Tech who was 1 inch short of the broad jump record, world record, combine record. And so you had some people really pushing the limits athletically.
Hmm.
You talk about great athletes. Georgia's got a ton of them. Who stands out to you from Athens that's now moving on to the NFL? Is there anybody? You know, we talked privately, and you made the statement Georgia had their freaks on display. They've got plenty of freaks always. And I feel like they can kind of get overshadowed because there's so many of them. Who
Yep.
sticks out above the rest of the crowd?
Well, Amarius Mims to me, there were pictures circulating on Twitter, and it just gives you an appreciation how massive these guys. This guy's like 6'7", and just I mean, he's just massive. So to me, he's going to be that top 10 offensive. I think he's be that first offensive tackle off the books. Lad McConkey was top 3, I believe, in the 40. Continues to do work. Lad is going to find his way somewhere into the first round. To me, he is that prototypical. He's scrappy, the gamer. Whatever you want to say. I think Lad's going to go there. I'm going to call it right now. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to select Tyke Smith in the second round because we all know the Philadelphia Eagles cannot go at least 1 or 2 rounds in an NFL draft without drafting a Georgia Bulldog. And Tyke via West Virginia is actually a Philadelphia native. So can't wait to see him in a Philadelphia Eagles uniform. And then obviously Javon Burton played really, really well. Just did a nice job this weekend at corner. So he'll probably be one of those top corners, probably somewhere in that mid to late first round, early second round pick. But like I said, they did well. They had a couple running backs there in Edwards and Milton. To me, Dejon Edwards never showed up this year in 2023. I'll be talking a little bit about that when I go to preview the running backs for the spring. But to me, where I think you're going to find value, especially rounds 5, 6, 7, going to be Kendall Milton. Uh, I feel like he had some injuries this year, but always had the ability to make those big key runs, kind of take the top off every now and again, but also showed his versatility as a receiver. And I think if you look at what the NFL looks at and needs out of their backs, Milton, I think, is going to be that ideal guy. He's not going to be your primary guy. He's not going to tote the rock, 20 times a game, but he's there 5 to 7 touches, maybe rushing, and then maybe another, 3 to 5, 2 to 3 receiving yards. So that kind of gives me a little overview. I'll have something a little bit more later in the week on last word, looking at the combine for the freaks that were on display from Athens.
Yeah, no doubt. I like that pick with Kendall Milton. I think he is a steal. I think he does a lot of good things in the NFL. He's that type of back. So we talked a little bit about Texas and Oklahoma, and it is a new look SEC coming into this year. And so I won't delay us any further. We're going to kick it over to a great conversation with our friend and colleague Andrew McCleary, who is a Football Writers Association Football Writers of America Association member, and just a great conversation that we were able to have with him about about Oklahoma, about the Big 12, about them entering the league in the SEC. He has a really cool piece out on Last Word. It's really a letter from the Big 12 saying goodbye to Texas and Oklahoma. So I encourage you guys to check that out. We're going to step aside here. It just means more coffee. We'll be right back. Welcome back to It Just Means More Football and Coffee. Again, I'm Rob Williams with Craig McMichael. We have with us Andrew McCleary, one of our great colleagues and friends here, a Football Writers Association of America member, and covering the Big 12 and Texas Tech at Last Word on College Football. And so if you want to participate in following along with the most fun conference in the country, then you can give him a follow on Twitter, and make sure that you're following along with all of his Last Word on College Football material, just as you do with us. We want you to hear the last word from Andrew, but we're going to jump in because we are talking SEC here always, and we have some movement from the Big 12 over to the SEC. Before we get there, Andrew, what's up, man? How's it going?
Man, we're doing good. It feels very much like a fall Saturday out where I'm at in Maryland. So no better time to start talking some ball.
It's always a good time to start talking ball because college football never stops, and neither does our cup of coffee. We see you over there with your mug, taking a nice sip there, getting yourself ready for the morning. All of our listeners and viewers, I'm sure, are enjoying a nice pancake or biscuit or scrambled eggs right now. And so we just want to meet them where they're at the table and talk ball. Can you start off?
What am I drinking?
Yeah.
So it's not Maxwell. So I know we're already clearing the bar there. No, this one actually, Costco was offloading their winter blends, the whole bean. So this is actually Starbucks's winter blend in here.
Pinky's up today. Pinky's up this morning.
Oh, very, very bougie this morning. But Rob, I got a kick out of you talking about how you keep the bar low for your coffee because then everything is better. I couldn't help but think of when I was in the military, I was doing an exercise in Seattle in January, and it was a nighttime exercise. And we were working out of an old hangar. It was about 15, 20 degrees every night. And they had the big green plastic drink dispensers. And at the time, I really didn't drink a ton of coffee. And when I did, I needed a lot of cream, a lot of sugar, a warm milkshake, if you will. I was so cold this one night. I just saw steam coming out of this drink dispenser. And I was like, I got to go have it. And it came out, and it was legitimately tar that came out from the dispenser. And I drank it, kept me awake. It was disgusting, but I warmed up. So if you want to talk about rock bottom when it comes to coffee, I have found it. And
in Seattle, of all places, too, right?
Yes, correct. There's a difference between the greater Seattle coffee scene and what DOD would sponsor for an exercise. Those two things do not align very well. But
Sam's got to get it in the NIL game. Yeah. Come on now.
Hey, look, I understand that my philosophy is to start at the bottom so we can only go up. But I'll say, after years of Maxwell House, my I have acquired the taste, and it is indeed good to the last drop. So I'm fine over here, guys. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad for me.
I'm not here to disparage anybody's coffee drinking. I have three small kids. I will drink plenty of coffee. I drink it black. Like I'm here for all the coffee.
Hey, can you tell us a little bit about your experience and your background with the Big 12 before we get going? I know you could speak specifically to Tech, maybe a little bit, but just overall with the conference.
Sure. So, even before I started covering the Big 12 for Last Word, I grew up in the Dallas area in what I believe to be the peak of the Big 12. So basically 2000 to 2009. That's truly when Oklahoma and Texas served to be the flag bearers of the conference. When the Big 12 was formed out of the Southwest Conference, it took a little while for one of them to really establish themselves. Mm-hmm. But when those two started to take off in the early 2000s, up through the rest of that decade, they reestablished themselves in the fabric of college football nationally. And certainly the arcs of both programs took quite significant turns after 2009, and are now finding themselves at interesting spots coming to the SEC. Coming into the 2024 season, kind of in a reverse situation of what they've been over the last 10, 15 years. So I've lived in Big 12 country when the Big 12 was really the preeminent college football conference for a good portion of time before the SEC took the reins and have yet to yield those. So I've seen it up close. I know what these two programs that are joining the SEC can bring, both positively and negatively. And if you're a fan, you're probably going to think it's all negative. Start interacting with a Longhorn Sooner fan today. Just build up your tolerance now. But that's where my background comes from in terms of, being a grassroots Big 12 person. And then once I got to Last Word and got a chance to cover the conference as a whole, seeing the conference shift as it has over the last couple of years, and for lack of a better term, sharing a bedroom with, two divorced parents, what the rest of the conference has been doing has been interesting to see as well.
Curious real quick to follow up on that. So like 2020, June or July 2021, when the news comes out, it was doom and gloom for the Big 12. Like we thought for sure the Big 12 was about ready to break up, similar to what we had with the Pac-12, kind of fast forward. Where does before we jump into where Texas, Oklahoma fit, I love, first off, I love the Big 12 commissioner, but like, where do you see the Big 12 slotting in? Obviously, I think it's behind the Big 10 and SEC, but where do they slot in? Where do they fit in college football going forward in 2024 and beyond?
So they absolutely should slot right in that third tier, that first best conference below the Big Two. Brett Yormark has done an incredible job from day one. The biggest thing he did was negotiate a new TV deal before the Pac-12 even got theirs remotely under wraps, and then turns out they never got one. And we saw what happened there. But he has very much come in, made it very clear he wants to be an innovator. He wants to grow the conference. I think he also has a realistic understanding of the landscape, and that's pretty impressive because he's not a college football lifer. He's not a college administrator. He's an outsider with a massive background in entertainment. So he certainly knows what the conference needs from that standpoint. And we've seen some of that just, in the Big 12 conference game. He's got the wrestling belt out there. He's trying all sorts of new things. We've got the Big 12 going to Mexico in 2024. So I think the conference is in a very good spot moving forward. But he's still, that is the ceiling at this point, unfortunately, if you're a Big 12 fan.
I would love real quick before, Rob, I'm sorry I cut you off, but before one of the things I'd love to see is, like, we talked last week about Sankey and Petiti kind of getting together, rethinking football. I would love to have Yormark in the room. To me, he is innovative and he is thinking outside of the box, and I feel like that is what college football needs. And we can talk about 14-team playoff, whatever that may be, but like Yormark is that forward thinker, and he was able again to play chess where the Pac-12 was like losing all of the checkers pieces. So I just want to give you a head tip because I think you guys are in a good spot, and I think you're coming from a place of strength. So
I think it's the most fun conference in the country, like I said before, and it's the most competitive, and it's going to be a ton of fun to watch because it's kind of up for grabs now with Texas and Oklahoma leaving. And to be fair, I think it was up for aside from last year when Texas had kind of a meteoric rise, it's been up for grabs with them in it. So, I think that it really gets interesting in 2024.
Well, Oklahoma would like to remind you that they had a stranglehold on the Big 12 for the better part of like the last 8 years until Riley left town. But truly behind Oklahoma, the gap between number 2, number 3, and everyone other than Kansas until, they've changed and turned their trajectory around. And as a matter of fact, giving Lance Leipold a big old raise the other day. The gap between those teams was always minute, and you can see how open the conference is going to be just from a pure recruiting standpoint. In the 2024 class, the only Big 12 team to sign a top 25 class was Texas Tech, and Texas Tech is not a program that has been built on big-time recruiting classes. So to your point, every single week in the Big 12 is going to be highly contested, close games. You've got a wide variety of football that's going to be played. So, yes, in terms of pure fun and kind of what a lot of people think college football to be, you're going to get that in the Big 12. That said, I'm also realistic to understand that the SEC and the Big 10, their product is still going to be incredible. It's still going to be what everyone turns into.
Right. So to your point, and kind of shifting a little bit, you talk about Texas and Oklahoma coming in. Let's talk Texas first, just because they appear to be the bigger dog here. And I said to Craig, and I may have said this on the show in another week, you give me 3 to 5 years ago, I would have never said Texas will be more SEC ready than Oklahoma. Yet here we are, right? So what do you think on two sides of the coin? What's the biggest struggle for them transitioning into the SEC, for Texas specifically? And then if I'm setting a number for them in terms of how quickly can they get to the SEC championship, I think in those first 3 seasons, can they get it done? I think that will. It's also a little up for grabs with Saban kind of vacating and allowing another spot for somebody to come up and challenge Georgia. Do you think that they can win the league in 3 years? So struggles, and how quickly do they find success?
They could do it next year. There's no reason Texas can't win the SEC in 2024. Sark has been building the program how you're supposed to, for lack of a better term. He wins 5 his first year, 8 last year, 12 last year, makes the playoff, wins the Big 12. But the biggest difference is Sark knows the bodies and the depth up front on both lines of scrimmage were Texas's biggest areas of concern when he took over. Texas has always recruited well, but it's been a lot of flash pieces, stud wide receivers, stud running backs, and some of them have been great that come through Texas, no doubt about it. But what they have recruited in the trenches has been the biggest difference. And Texas has always had a problem playing opponents that were way less talented than them. That was their biggest flaw over the last 15 years. Ever since Mac Brown left, they would play down to competition below them. Big helmet games, big time games. Texas always played well in them. They didn't win them all, but they always played well. So you take a team now that just went to the playoff, is bringing their quarterback back. They have a ton of pieces returning from a playoff team, in addition to the fact that the last 3 years, Texas has recruited a top 5 recruiting class. This is a team poised to compete for the SEC title in 2024. Now, the biggest challenge they face is the quality of opponent on a week in, week out basis. So I won't equate it nearly as much to a G5 team moving up to the P5, kind of like what we saw in the Big 12 with Cincinnati and Houston and BYU. Texas is not going to do that. But for lack of a better term, there's not an off week now in the SEC. And that's good for, us as fans, but that'll be where Texas, that's where that depth comes into play.
And I feel like, we talked about this before, but Sark is doing in Texas kind of what Kirby did in Athens, right? Like he's taken the Saban blueprint, which we have seen Jeremy Pruitt, among others, have not always been able to replicate. But Kirby's doing it in Athens. He's taking that Georgia talent, recruiting at that national level, building in the Alabama likeness. I feel like Sark is doing the exact same thing. It was a little bit of a slower build, but this year you saw it. And like you said, they've struggled in some of those non-helmet games. But you look at like TCU, they kind of gutted it out. They needed that big catch from A.D. Mitchell to make that conversion on 3rd down, to win that game, to put the game away. They've won big, they've won small. They're doing that. And you see it with recruiting, but you also see it in the portal. Sark is flashy. Sam Kahn, one of my favorite Texas authors outside of you, Andrew, really has done a good job of really showcasing what Sark can do. You know, they talked a nice bit about what they did and what they're doing a little bit in Houston, but you look at the recruiting visit to get Arch, and I feel like that was a big steal. Him getting Arch was saying to Ole Miss, was saying to Georgia, was saying to Alabama, we're here and we're ready to compete. You know, so they've done that. So I feel like, yeah, they're going to be a little bit a different challenge, but Sark has them built in that mindset and in that mold, ready to compete week in and week out. And I know my dogs are going down there in October, so I'm looking forward to that one, or September, I believe.
You just said the word mindset, and I think that's where it shifts for me, because the recruiting, to be honest, doesn't impress me much, simply because they've always recruited at a high level. But Andrew alluded to it as well, that it's been flashy positions. It's been skill position guys.
Yep.
So now it's more of a holistic, across the board recruiting approach. But I think it's the mindset. Can you be mentally tough? And you see this. Look at North Carolina's teams now. It started with Mac in Austin, where the mindset is just not there. There's not mental toughness. You have a soft defense, regardless of what what the Tar Heels did to South Carolina last year. Over the course of the season, you could see the defense start to fall off again. And so I think that type of mindset has existed in Austin for, almost 2 decades, really. Really over 15 years since you started to see things trend downward after Colt McCoy, right? And things start to fall off. They just don't have you said it, they play down to competition. They're not going to hit you. They'd rather look good than play good. And so that's been the narrative and the MO from my perspective. But that shifted a little bit. They brought it last year and were willing to get in there and scrap and compete. And that's what you got to do in the SEC, because to your point, quality of opponent each week. You go to Starkville, and they might win 4 games next year, but they're going to have some big guys on the defensive line that are going to bust through there and knock you out once or twice over the course of the game. So if you're not ready for it, you can slip up in any week.
And it's worth noting that Texas, it seems like in the last 2 years specifically, their whole organization is aligned correctly. Boosters, athletic director, head coach of the football team, all seem to be pulling in the same direction. And for a long time, that was not the case. Texas had one of the more nefarious operators in terms of how boosters are running things behind the scenes, and that was the exact opposite of what Oklahoma has been for a long, long time. And it's no secret, when the entire organization, as oddly constructed as it is in college football, when it's all pulling in the same direction, that's going to translate on the field. And Texas is finally seeming to have that alignment in all different phases of the football program.
Real quick before we get into Oklahoma, I think you said something important about alignment. One of the things that we talked about last week is we talked about Texas A&M. One of the bitter rivals of Texas, and that word alignment is not there in College Station. If we look at some of that disaster, we look at where the AD is trying to hire a coach this year. Alignment is nowhere to be found, and that's why A&M continue to spin your tires. I'd love to hear your impressions on is Alco the right guy, but more importantly, this is a question we asked last week: who is the program A&M wants to become? Can Alco take them to that 11-12 wins playoff? Because that, I think, is the mindset of what the Aggies and the 12th man wants. But is that actually reality or practical?
So Elko absolutely is, I thought, was a great hire for them. They moved away from the big name. They did take a bit more of a measured approach in terms of who can come in and really run the program. But you look at Texas A&M's history, and it's very clear from a resources standpoint, they are the most underachieving program in college football history. They don't have any titles. They've got nothing to show for any real on-field success. They've had incredible players come through there, no doubt about it. But in terms of team success, they just haven't done anything. And it's very clear how things spiraled out of control with Jimbo, that there's something in the water in College Station. If you go to College Station, you know there's something in the water there. I can speak to that. Anyone who's been down there, it's a special place for college football. If you don't understand Texas A&M, though, you will think you're walking into a very large cult down there that is distracted from, I don't know, reality, more often than not.
Passion.
That said, A&M's got resources. They've got it all. They've got anything a coach could want. And if Elko comes in and truly builds the program in a similar fashion to what's been happening down in Austin, which I know is only fueling the fire for them now that Texas is back and they left them over a decade ago to try to get out from under their shadow, Elko can absolutely build what Texas has built in College Station.
So here's my thought as we transition to Oklahoma, as we look at that, right? Like I said a minute ago, a couple of years ago, never would have said Texas is more SEC ready than Oklahoma. Things shifted. In the same way, over a decade ago, would have never said Missouri is more SEC ready than Texas A&M. But boy, were they! You know, winning the East twice early on, and then what Drinkwitz is doing right now. That's a whole nother podcast. We don't have time to get into that. Nor do I really care to speak highly of Missouri or Eli Drinkwitz right now. But yeah, just a strange turn of events. So maybe we get surprised. Let's talk Oklahoma for just a minute. When I look at Brent Venables, I think he's a really, really good defensive mind. He's a good football coach. I'm able to observe from the South Carolina standpoint what is lacking at Clemson since he left and went to Norman. Offensive firepower is the question for me. Seth Luttrell, is that correct? Is offensive coordinator now?
Yeah. But he's taking over for Lebby. Oklahoma fans, most of them are not mad to see Lebby walk out the door. But here's the thing: Oklahoma, they still averaged almost 42 points a game last year. The issue with Oklahoma's offense is they would just completely go MIA for stretches of the game. So total point totals at the end of the game reflect one thing, but if you go 35, 40% of the game and it's 3 and out, it's no rhythm on offense. They never got into a consistent flow throughout the entire season, and it showed. They still won 10 games last year. So I think Brent, especially in that first year, his first year there, they reverted back to the worst season in the last 25 years. That's just what all the numbers show us. That's what the records show us. It was bad. The defense was historically bad. Last year, the defense got a little bit better. The offense, again, put up points, but just seemingly could not take that next step to where everyone was like, oh my gosh, we got to watch out for Oklahoma's offense again. So they are in position to do that.
The air raid, right? North Texas, he is an old
a little bit,
right?
Yeah, so he'll have some air raid concepts, but Luttrell has done a good job at all of his previous stops adapting to the players on his team. Okay. So he'll still go 2 tight ends if he needs to. It's not going to be the pure uncut air raid that Mike Leach ran. I don't think anyone's ever going to run that again. Nope. It was fun. It was great, but there has to be some level of balance, and they absolutely have a stud quarterback in Jackson Arnold that can run any type of offense, dynamic playmaker. We saw a little bit of that in the bowl loss to Arizona. So Luttrell can get the offense cooking. It's just a matter of, can the defense be a Venables defense? Like that's really been the surprising part here.
He made that change, right? He got rid of Ted Roof. I think it's a sacrificial lamb, to be honest. But he bought in a DC. He bought in Jacksonville State? Is it Jacksonville State's defensive coordinator? I'm trying to remember. He bought in it was like a young up and comer. I'm trying to remember.
I'm trying to think of his name because let's see.
Zach Alley.
Yeah.
That's why you're the host. That's why you're the hostess with the mostest right there.
He's got us.
So you also have Jay Valai and Todd Bates. So it's looking like you got a group of co-defensive coordinators that he's working with.
Yeah.
But that's the new
So
one that he brought in.
yeah, that'll be. I mean, that's really the biggest issue with Oklahoma. This guy made his reputation, his calling card. You know, everyone knows him as the defensive coordinator. You know, most recently what they did at Clemson, but you know, before that he spent plenty of time in Oklahoma. So it's been odd to see that side of the ball struggle as much as it has, but they did show improvement last year. And so if you're Oklahoma, you can only hope that continues to trend that way.
What does improvement look like in 2024? Because yeah, they went to 10 wins, but you know, the offense was kind of there. The defense hasn't been much, but like, I don't know, like I get this disappointing feeling, and I don't know if it was, you know, bad taste in my mouth from Lincoln Riley's brisket or whatever that may be, but like, sorry, I had to find a way to bring that in.
That's totally fine. He needs to stay away from all smokers and briskets. He's banned for life. No reprieves after that.
100%. But like, you know, like what is, you know, Joe Castiglione is probably one of the best ADs in the game. I mean, he's got the idea, he's got alignment, but you got to think he's kind of a little bit he's got to be disappointed with Brent, and like you got to think the leash is not going to be very long. You know, 6, 7, even 8 wins, is that going to be enough to really set them going forward to Oklahoma? You know, where do you see that them fitting? Because I think it's just going to be a struggle. I really do.
So I do think that Brent's going to be given some time. He really galvanized the fan base after they were jilted by Riley. Yeah. At least that's how they feel. But to your point, like while they made improvements, you know, in total defense in Brent's first year, they were like one of the worst in FBS, like in the 120th range. Total defense last year, 77. Again, not great. You know, Texas Tech was at 79. That's the barometer that you're looking at there. So the defense has to improve significantly. They have to be a top 50 defense to support an offense that does have some firepower. I think realistically, Oklahoma, they still can come into the SEC and challenge day one. Like they do have the horses. They're not ready like Texas is, but you know, I saw we had win totals come out, and I'm pretty sure Oklahoma's was set at like 7.5. Like that's pretty, you know, as the kids say, that's pretty mid, especially if you're Oklahoma, where, you know, since the turn of the century, you've only won single digit games like 4 times. So is it a reset of expectations for Oklahoma? I don't know. I don't foresee Oklahoma spiraling out of control, like say like a Nebraska where they just get stuck in the middle there. I don't see that at all. There's too much history. There's too much support for Oklahoma to dive off the deep end, if you will, and never recover. But there's a lot of questions.
I'm sorry, but it does sound a little Nebraska. I think Nebraska would love to be in the mid of the Big Ten, but like, you know, I'm sure there are many Cornhusker fans who are saying we've had too much history and too much proud, and I don't know. To me, this is the one where I feel like there's going to be some growing pains. I think Joe Castiglione is going to be making some, might have to make some decisions at the end of the year.
I think 7.5 is a fair number to coming in, but my concern if I'm looking at Oklahoma is how many years is it set at 7.5? I think 7.5 is right for this year. It's in the right area. But if we're in 2027, and it's still 7.5.
But 7.5, when you were the one winning the Big 12 and you were going to the college football playoff consistently, 7.5 is not getting you in the 12, 14, or 30-17 playoff.
No. But you have a new coach. You have a new conference. I'll give you the year. I'm just saying, if we're talking 2026, 2027, and we're still here, that's a problem.
But listen, Sark got to the playoff in year 3 under a 14. He's continued that trajectory up, and that's what you're going to have to see out of Venables. Is he going to continue that trajectory up? Because, yeah, it's going to be a tougher road in the SEC. But, like, if they're getting housed again, or, you know, if we're at 7 wins or 8 wins, is that really Oklahoma football?
No, it's not. I can tell you right now, anything after this year in that 8-win range is going to put, you know, Houston fires coaches for winning 8 games. Oklahoma is not going to stand living in that 8, even 9 win range. Like this year, for example, Oklahoma's non-conference schedule is Temple, Houston, Tulane, and Maine. Okay, Tulane's probably the best team on that schedule. Sorry, Houston, you guys were pretty bad last year. Willie Fritz is great. He's not going to turn it around that quickly against Oklahoma. So you have to assume a 4-0 season in the non-conference play for Oklahoma. And then just to clear that 7.5 win total, you've got to find 4 wins against Tennessee, Auburn, Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, and then you get to stretch down the end of at Mizzou, Bama, and at LSU. So the schedule doesn't
SEC.
the schedule does not set up great for Oklahoma down the stretch. So kind of to your point, Rob, they could start off really well. Maybe get to that second bye. Get to the Mizzou game with 7-8 wins in their pocket. But an 0-3 stretch down the end there will raise all the red flags in Norman. Yeah. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I've loved having this conversation this morning. We've gotten we've covered a lot of stuff, right? Texas and Oklahoma coming in. It's gonna be a ton of fun from an SEC standpoint. Again, if you guys want to follow along with Andrew on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, it's at CFP4_us. I'm correct, right? So again, that's at CFP, the number 4_us. We'd love for you guys to jump in there and follow him. Also, all the stuff on Last Word is phenomenal. He's going to give you some great picks around game day, and he's also going to give you all the highlights of the Big 12 and Texas Tech. So we would love that. Andrew, thanks again for coming in and joining us today, man. What do you have on Last Word last week, coming up this week? What can we look for from you?
Well, last week we dove into Texas Tech's biggest hire. There's a new offensive line coach in town. While he shares the last name McGuire, he's not related to head coach Joey McGuire. But the offensive line has been a big struggling point for the Red Raiders before McGuire, and it hasn't gotten much better in his 2 years since. So that's the most recent one. What I've got in the works is because spring ball is not that far away, we're going to go ahead and just take the opportunity as a jilted Big 12 fan lover to write a goodbye letter to Texas and Oklahoma on their way out. So everyone will get to feel what us Big 12 fans have been going through with Texas and Oklahoma around. So that's in the works right now. Should be coming out in the next couple of days.
Perfect. Well, we'll be sure to check that out.
Texas Tech's my pick for the Big 12 2024. Love what Coach McGuire is doing. I love it. He's got those Texas high school football roots. To me, it's all going to come together. Utah's going to put up a little bit of a fight coming in from the Pac-12, but Texas Tech will be making the playoff in 2024. Take that, Dion. There's my receipt.
Woo!
There you have it. Craig coming in with 30 seconds left in our time with Andrew and making sure that he kisses up just a little bit before we get out of here. But hey, we'll keep that receipt and we'll see what the Red Raiders do in the fall, and we'll keep up with Andrew to find out exactly what's going on there. Again, thanks for being with us, Andrew. We'll talk to you later. Guys, we'll be right back with our last word. Welcome back to It Just Means More Football and Coffee. That was a great time talking with Andrew, and we really coming on. So we're back to me being in Mexico here. So I'm sorry for those of you on YouTube, you no longer get to see my beautiful face. Really quick as we close up here, it's time for the last word. Craig, as we look at these teams coming in, I'm going to be straight up. I don't see Oklahoma making many waves in year one. We talked about that. We got into it. Yep. But Texas makes waves everywhere they go, even if they don't win. I do expect them to win. What happens the first time they're in a hostile environment and the entire student section, the entirety of a stadium is throwing horns down at the Longhorns? What say you?
Well, I think Matthew McConaughey gets his best little Lincoln commercial, gets a little tear in his eye, and he gives them the big horns up right back at them because while our rival fan bases may be giving the horns down to Texas, they are going to be rolling, I think, through the SEC, and I think they're going to be meeting Georgia and in Atlanta. They've got a tough schedule. They're not avoiding anybody this year, but whatever this Big 12 was about, throwing a flag for throwing horns down. I'm sorry, this is the SEC. It just means more. You're going to get chirped, but here's the thing: Sark isn't worried about no horns down because he's got the transfer portal and he's got the recruiting to back it up. Oh, and by the way, in case Quinn slips up, he's got Arch, which Alabama and Georgia do not.
I think, first of all, folks, in case you missed that, that was an SEC championship preview prediction from Craig McMichael right here. Texas and Georgia. Lock it in, book it right here. Craig just said it on March 4th, 2024. He has locked in his pick. So maybe he's going to look a genius. Maybe not. We'll see. I do agree with your point about the SEC, and it does just mean more, and people are going to chirp. It's going to happen. Other teams are going to do it. I don't think we should throw the flag on it. We don't throw flags on anybody else's celebrations getting mocked, mimicked. You barely got a flag for Ole Miss and Mississippi State pretending to be a dog peeing on the football after a touchdown. And although that proved to be costly, that's the level that it has to go to throw the flag in the SEC. And that's a level of hatred
hang on, real quick.
Ferocious rivalry.
Speaking of that, of the incident of the Ole Miss dog peeing, did you read the piece in the Athletic that happened after that penalty set in motion 321 people changing jobs that offseason with all of the coaching turnover between Ole Miss and Mississippi State? I think it was Bruce Feldman.
I did not, but that's hilarious.
that one instance, Matt Luke gets fired the next day. Joe Moorhead gets fired after they lose the bowl game. But yeah, that's just too funny. But yeah, listen, it just means more. Like I said, yeah, I could be an idiot for my Texas at Georgia pick, but Sark and Kirby have both shown that they have learned from Coach Saban, and they're ready to take that next step. Both of them have been in the playoffs. Sorry to my buddy Eddie from Texas A&M. You are still not going to make it, buddy. But Texas is ready. They'll be ready. So I'm going horns up. Big McConaughey fan vibes over here.
Well, I'll be the guy to do it. Horns down. I don't have them in my SEC championship game. That's all the tease and sneak peek that I'm going to give you. And I'm probably going to do horns down all year just because I want to stick it to them. You're the new kid on the block. And if we want to do horns down, we can do horns down. If there's one easy way to stop it or to mute the haters, and that's just to win. If you win games and it pisses people off and they do horns down, point to the scoreboard and walk off the field. And I think that's what Texas needs to do instead of whining and complaining about, oh, they're doing horns down, it's offensive, or whatever their argument is. So I don't think that really is going to be much of a thing in the SEC, just because there's a pretty wide consensus among existing SEC teams that if they want to do horns down, they're going to do it and dare somebody to stop them. And it'll be a nice little story on the side, but I don't think it's I don't think it really becomes the featured it has in the Big 12. That's just my take.
No offense to Andrew, but in SEC, we're worried about winning national championships, not trying to make sure Oklahoma and Texas feel bad for leaving. So I'm right there with you. So what do you got coming up this week from last week? I know you're in Mexico. You got anything coming up this week, or are you taking a week off?
Yeah, so we're continuing our coaching previews. So last week, if you missed it, we had the defensive coordinator Clayton White analysis to kind of look at what's coming up in 2024. What are the expectations? What are the pressure that's on him? Almost lost his job last year, switches it up with a third of the year left, and really turn things around from a defensive standpoint. So if he can continue that, it looks good. If not, I think that the leash is pretty short on him. And then I also had a really cool interview with a former Limestone University player who played under head coach Burris, who is now the wide receivers coach at South Carolina, because Kirby stole James Coley from us, like you predicted. So,
speaking of which, where's
that
my
was a really
coffee?
cool piece. If you missed that one, go back and do that. It's in the mail. Don't worry about it. I'll bring you. I'll mail you something from Mexico.
Damn right you will. Come on now.
Just don't count on it getting there anytime. Just don't count on it getting there anytime soon. So, yeah. So that's what I had last week. Coming up, we're continuing to go through the coaches, and so we'll be looking at some defensive position coaches kind of this week is where we're at. Just kind of stemming off of that Clayton White piece a little bit. So also may look at either this week or next the new running backs coach Markel Blackwell, who came over from Texas A&M as well. And so we'll take a look at those. He got Quinshot Judkins, so that's not necessarily recruiting, but that's development, because he was a 3-star kid.
I wonder, does he like red and black? And maybe Georgia?
Yeah. Here we go. We're making another bold prediction.
No,
Stay
I'm
away
not.
From our... What about you? You got some. You mentioned before freaks of the combine. Is that where we're headed this week on the last word on Georgia Bulldogs?
Yeah. Last week I looked at James Coley coming in from South Carolina. Was there, I believe, all of a month. I don't think he even got a box unpacked yet before he left Columbia for Athens. Kind of looked at what that meant for Georgia. And then, Georgia also did really nice. They picked up coach from Georgia Tech to place Del McGee. Mr. Crawford had strong Georgia ties. So kind of looked at, the statement that Kirby sends to college football, one about the importance of recruiting, but the fact that he takes two of Georgia's rivals, South Carolina and Georgia Tech, and takes two of their top recruiters to help fill his staff. I thought that was good. Yeah, but then looking ahead for this week, I'll look at obviously a couple of the winners from the combine. Who's moving up, who's doing that, and then spring ball is going to kick off next week on the 12th. And I think we're going to start by looking at the running back room, because just like Kirby picked off some of the coaches from their rivals, Mr. Etienne from the Florida Gators are going to look really nice in the red and black, wearing number 1. So we'll feature him, and he had some interesting comments to say too. We'll talk maybe a little bit more about that next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to seeing Etienne myself. Not that I'm supposed to like either one of them, but if I have to pick one, I'm taking Georgia over Florida all day. That orange and blue makes me sick. Anyway, it's been a great week. Thanks again for joining us. Remember, it's at McMicah7, at Rob Williams GCP, or you can email us at secfootballandcoffee@gmail.com. Again, that's secfootballandcoffee@gmail.com. Give us your questions. Send us a DM, tag us on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Message us. Let us know. What are your thoughts? What are your questions? How do you feel about Texas and Oklahoma coming into the best college football conference in the country? We'll see you guys next time. Enjoy that cup of coffee.
Appreciate it, Rob. Stay safe out there, brother. Talk to you soon.